Having put it off for ages, I thought I'd take a look at the new EYFS framework. Now, I'm not very good at government frameworks. They tend to make me a bit cross. But I thought I'd try looking at it from a creative perspective. Suddenly, I felt much more positive. I downloaded a copy, skimmed through the summary to the introduction, and there it was, hidden in the very first point. A child's experiences between birth and age 5 have a major impact on their future life chances. And I thought, yeah, I agree with that. I think it's probably the most important sentence in there. We need to make sure that we don't majorly impact on children's life chances by turning them off learning for life, which we know will happen if we go too formal too soon. My name's Trisha Lee, and I'm the Artistic Director of Make Believe Arts. I developed helicopter stories based on the work of Vivian Gussin-Paley. I also created the Poetry Basket, and recently we've launched the Story Basket. For me to believe in an early years framework, the way we deliver it has to be steeped in creativity. So I took a look at some of the prime areas to see if there are any aspects that link to what many settings are already doing with storytelling, poetry and helicopter stories. The first prime area that I looked at was communication and language. Now, this is full of early learning goals that each of us will already be seeing all the time in our settings. So I'm going to go through a few of them, looking at them from a creative perspective. Now, look at these 5-year-olds watching the acting out of the story of one of their peers. All of them are listening attentively. But it's not just the audience. So are the young actors on the stage, because except for the storyteller, none of the children performing have ever heard the story before. So they need to listen to know how to respond. And responding is another one of those goals. But there's more. When children dictate their stories, they offer up their own ideas. And often while this happens, other children crowd round and listen attentively to find out what they're saying. They may even end up reincorporating parts of the stories their friends have told into the stories they tell themselves. Now, let's look at providing explanations. A 4-year-old once told Vivian Gussin-Paley a story that was literally the words "once upon a time." Vivian asked the storyteller how she wanted to represent that in the acting out, and the girl stood up and she ran around the table several times. And Vivian said it was like she was showing the passage of time quite magically. What the girl was doing was providing an explanation for how her story should be brought to life. And children are doing this all the time when we talk to them about their stories or we're curious about the things that matter to them. The next goal I looked at was introducing vocabulary. And the best way I know to do this is to actually share poems and stories with children on a regular basis. If we surround children in a language-rich environment, they will begin to use these words and story structures in their everyday speech and in their helicopter stories. Carol Fox, in her book At the Edge of the Forest, says that if we can get children telling stories regularly, we may find linguistic, narrative and literary competencies of complex kinds and things that aren't readily observable to us in other formats. I went through some of the poems in the summer term booklet from the Poetry Basket, and I wanted to see what sort of language children would be introduced to if they were regularly learning these poems. And there was words like jiggle, lurking, rustles, bustles, swishes, zing, blinking, winking, creeping. So a ton of rich vocabulary that children are picking up through the poetry that they're enjoying learning. Likewise, by listening to good quality stories, children become familiar with story structure, with different ways stories can start, with character, setting, and all the time their imagination is firing. I'm going to share a story with you now that was told to me by a 2-year-old boy, Ollie. And Ollie's brother had just celebrated his 4th birthday. Cake, house, eating, more cake, eating, cake. Even in this simple story, Ollie is telling us about an event that's happened in his past. And the more we do helicopter stories, the more children get familiar with past, present and future tense, and you will see these cropping up in their stories. So I'm going to move on to the next prime area, physical development. And for this one, I thought I'd share with you my idea of what should be included in the early learning goals. I believe that children at this stage in their development should be able to drive around the stage as if riding on a motorbike. They should be able to build a house using their bodies. They should be able to work together to tiptoe like a mouse, or creep like a lion, or sleep like a baby kitten. Look at these 2 boys pretending to be lions, and all you need to do is look at the intensity in their eyes, the way they lift their hands and place them back onto the ground ever so gently as they prowl around the stage, arching their backs, ready to pounce. Now, in my mind, watching how accurately these boys were able to represent being a lion surely means that they've exceeded the expected level of development. For personal, social and emotional development, I looked at just 2 points. Being able to wait for something you want. Now, look at these 3 and 4-year-olds waiting to tell their story so patiently. They know that I can only take one story at a time, and they wait and they listen attentively and they wait some more till eventually it's their time. If children want to do something and they can see why it can't happen, I've always found them to be incredibly patient. Now, this next one really annoyed me. Giving focused attention to what the teacher says. I was the one who added in "and the other children." But for me, focused attention should be earned. If something is interesting, then our 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds are really good at being focused. Look at the focus that these children are giving to the boy who is telling his story. Some of them are leaning forward in their enthusiasm. And remember that children's experiences between birth and age 5 have a major impact on their future life chances. So if we make it interesting and let them play, then they will give it their full attention. Literacy. With helicopter stories, you will regularly have children telling and retelling stories and narratives. You'll see the vocabulary that they use, the words they struggle with, the sophistication of their thinking. And in terms of word reading, so many times I've seen children point to the word on the page that is the character that they want to be. I want to be the Batman. That is early reading. And it comes because children are motivated by the story they've told and the character that they want to play. But the other thing that is highly motivating about helicopter stories is that if it's not your turn to tell a story, if you want to, you can write one of your own. Once there was a boy called Leo. He walked into a wall. He broke his knee and lived badly ever after. Finally, I just want to have a quick look at assessment. And I believe that the best assessment tools that you can have are a book full of stories that children have dictated themselves, and the knowledge that they have a repertoire of poems that they've learned and can recite by heart and are choosing to do in their own time. And that also they have a bank of stories that have warmed their heart, developed their emotional intelligence, and that will stay with them forever. Good luck, be creative. We can make this work for our children.